You are always turning things around as you guide us and surprising us, like a master who comes and serves the slaves. Make us ready today for your grace breaking in where we didn't expect it. Through the words that we've heard and my words and the meditations of all our hearts, you, Rock, Redeemer. Amen. Be dressed for action, Jesus says. And it makes me think of a guy who a week before last, in the middle of the week of rehearsals over at Tanglewood, prepared for 2 concerts that weekend, realized that he had forgotten his white jacket and had to drive all the way back to Boston to get it. Be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. Be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks, Jesus said. Blessed are those slaves whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will fasten his belt and have them sit down to eat, and he will come and serve them. Be dressed for action. Turns out that's a very interesting phrase. I looked it up in my Greek version of the New Testament. I don't remember much Greek anymore. But I could look things up, and I could tell that the text said something not quite the same as literally be dressed for action. And as it turns out, the King James Version and the Revised Standard Version have actually closer to the literal translation with the literal text with this translation, let your loins be girded about. I thought, I remember that one. We used to say it in seminary when we were preparing for some big exam. Gird up your loins, somebody would say. Nobody knew what it meant, but it was fun to say. So I decided to read about loins. Both the Greek and the Hebrew words that are translated loins refer specifically to the hips, or the lower part of the back. One meaning, for girding up the loins, it turns out, has to do with tying up the long lower garments that men used to wear in the ancient Middle East about the middle of the body in preparation for going someplace quickly. Like a few weeks ago, I saw a woman wearing a long skirt, and she gathered it up at the bottom so she could walk quickly to where she needed to go. That's girding up your loins. Sort of like, put on your jogging shorts and get going. Just before this, Jesus was telling his disciples not to worry about what the future held for them. Now, that wasn't the attitude that I recently came across in a little box that I saved from my parents' house that had my old Mad magazines in it, where Alfred E. Newman said every month, "What, me worry?" Wasn't quite that. Consider the lilies of the field was an invitation to thanksgiving for what we have, rather than anxiety for what we don't. But then Jesus adds that, armed with an attitude of thanksgiving, there are things that his followers shouldn't lose any time over. Putting your treasure where your heart is one. You want to care about something or someone? Give yourself to it, or to him, or to her, right now. Don't saunter about it. That's how he lived his life, isn't it? He saw a need and didn't waste any time. Other people thought he should wait. Wait until it's not the Sabbath, the Pharisees said. Wait until the dishes are done, Martha said. Wait until I can define just who my neighbor is, that lawyer said. But Jesus didn't want to wait. He acted. I think for most of us, it's usually the other way around. We think we ought to maybe care about something first, but by doing the research and make a giving plan with a sensible commitment and then give without going overboard, of course. But Jesus turns it all around. Give in order to care, he says. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be. That's why you don't want to waste any time. Our giving defines our treasure. The next meaning of loins, as it refers to the middle of the body, is where a belt would be fastened, where you would also have your sword. Girding up the loins means get ready for battle. That's a little less appealing for most of us, I think. Yeah? We're sick of the battles. I get email battles all the time. What does the Bible say? In his book, The Heart is a Little to the Left. I love that title. Think about it. The heart is a little to the left. Bill Coffin said, in matters of war and peace, the Bible is ambiguous. Age after age, peacemakers have repeated the grand words inscribed on the Isaiah wall opposite the United Nations. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. We all know that, right? Yet, the third chapter of Joel proclaims a time to beat plowshares into swords, pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am a warrior. That's the Bible. The church has been no less ambivalent, Phil Coffin went on. Is pacifism true obedience to the gospel or a false idealism based on the sentimentalization of radical evil? Actually, everybody is ambivalent, he says. Albert Camus talked of going forward with weapons in our hands and a lump in our throats. About the use of force, I think we should be ambivalent. The dilemmas are real. All we can say for sure, said Coffin, is that while force may be necessary, what is wrong, always wrong, is the desire to use it. Isn't it funny that Jesus was known as the Prince of Peace, or at least we think of him as the Prince of Peace, but that he also once said, do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. This can be confusing. Unless you see that Jesus was arguing against those who were afraid to rock the boat when it came to proclaiming and working for the good news of God for all. Isn't that what they said to all the great social movements in this country? Whether it had to do with outlawing slavery, or giving the right to vote to women, and to African Americans. I thought that because it was just this last Tuesday, 48 years ago, just 48 years ago, when Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. Or ending legal segregation in schools and then in public places. And now fighting to let people who aren't heterosexual marry the person that they love. Don't rock the boat, some people have always said. Whether it's a passive way to fight back or maybe because they're genuinely afraid of violence. But Jesus calls us to care. He didn't condone violence. After all, he told Peter to put up his sword in the Garden of Gethsemane. He never shied away from a fight that was worth having. I like how Augustine said, never fight evil as if it was something that was totally outside yourself. But he didn't say not to fight or be ready. Jesus' favorite book of the original Testament, I think, was Isaiah. In today's passage, Mary read about Isaiah throwing some light on the big sins for Israel, which he compared to what everybody knew at the time to have been the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah. It had to do with hospitality for all. That's what the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah were. Wash yourselves, Isaiah kind of pictures God saying, make yourselves clean, remove the evil of your doings from before my eyes, cease to do evil, learn to do good, seek justice, rescue the oppressed, defend the orphan, plead for the widow. In other words, battle the temptation to let people sink or swim on their own. I think, here's an example, at some point, you folks here have done those Church World Service Gifts of the Heart kits. They're four different kinds. They're cleanup kits and hygiene kits and baby kits and school kits and churches gather together and they box them all off. They send them to the warehouse in Maryland. What we're actually doing is banking them for the next need, so they'll be available immediately. We're girding up our loins when we do that, preparing for battle. Finally, there's a third meaning for the term loins. It has to do with descendants. So girding up your loins could be a way of saying, prepare those who come after you. Prepare those who come after you. We provide schools, of course, and pay for them through our taxes. We believe in education for every child, and that it may be the one thing that can change the lives of people born into poverty. Plus, we want every child to develop his or her brain to the best of their ability, because out of such brains and inspired imaginations will come cures for cancer and new ways of producing food, and the ability to negotiate peace between nations where nobody's ever been able to figure out how to do that. Or through the arts and drama and sports, we want kids to develop a sense of common purpose and leadership and fair play by agreed upon rules, and a sense of beauty which inspires us all with the joy of being alive and the realization that we're not alone in our struggles and our pain. We want them to learn empathy, don't we? We want all these things for all children, not just our own children or our grandchildren if we have them, but for everyone's children. Then there are the people of God. Because it's in the community where people seek God, where children will find a welcome that's different even from the love of their parents, and the faith that every human being has value in the sight of God. They will learn that no matter what happens to them or to the people around them, the love of God for them will never disappear. They will learn that when they feel absolutely alone, they aren't alone. They will know it in their heads from what people teach them. And they will know it in their hearts because people who didn't have to took time to care about them, to squat down or bend down. And squatting is a thing of the past for you. And call them by name and talk to them as a real person. In the church, you don't have to be shy about that. You're their family. You don't even have to ask Hari's permission. What are your kids' names? What are their names, Hari?
Eliana and Micah.
Eliana and Micah. Thank you. Your job is to say hello to Eliana and Micah after worship today. This is our unique calling. Everybody who's here today. Maybe you didn't grow up in the church. Not everybody has. But if you're lucky enough to have been raised in the arms of a congregation of people who care, there's nothing quite like it. There are people in my own experience in the church who will never know how important they were to me while growing up, but they helped me to know faith by how they treated me. They were girding up their loins, even if they didn't think about it in that way. So don't waste time. Children grow up in an instant. Don't miss your chance to make a difference. Be dressed for action. Have your lamps lit, said Jesus. Gird up your loins. It means putting on your jogging shorts, gathering your skirt, getting ready to act on the things that matter, and not putting it off. It means putting on the sword. That is, not being afraid to stand up for the right and the good for all children of God. And it means preparing those who come after us with a sure and certain knowledge and experience of the love of God for them that nobody can take away. Blessed are those whom the Master finds alert when he comes, Jesus says. Isn't that interesting? Another beatitude to add to that bunch that Jay had us thinking about a couple of weeks ago from Matthew. Blessed by being served by the Master, Jesus says. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, he says. Imagine that. We don't take God's place. God gives the kingdom. And we gird up our loins to show the world that we believe it. Thanks be to God.